Oh, I'm so happy I made it in. I was having issues in getting my stream going today. It happens on occasion, but I'm here, right? I would have kept trying. You guys know on occasion when this happens that I keep trying, sometimes a dozen times before I give up. I am somebody who never gives up. I just keep going, keep trudging along, one foot in front of another. I'm an adapt and conquer kind of girl. I've always been that person. Hello, Owen. Hello, Owen. I've always been that person. I suspect that a lot of you guys who come in and hang out with me are those kind of people that never give up, no matter what life throws at you, right? You keep trudging along, doing the very best that you can for yourself and for other people. Hello, Tammy. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome. I was just saying I was having trouble getting my live up and running today. Things are not always perfect, right? You always just got to do the very best that you can. When I was younger, life was kind of tough, right? You guys know I come from a dynamic family. And, sometimes we can beat ourselves up for that. I was somebody who was brought up to made to feel like they didn't have anything to offer, like I was never going to become anything in my entire life, that I had absolutely zero to contribute to anybody's betterment, especially mine. And I thought to myself, if that's the case, then I am just going to do the very best that I can. Now, I don't know what this is coming off of. It looks like a computer piece, so I think I'll just leave that there until I can figure out where it goes. Maybe that was the issue in me trying to go live tonight. I'm not quite. Oh, it might have come from there, but I'll figure that one out later, you know. But it is in just trying to create the best life for yourself as you possibly can. Nobody has a perfect life, and that's the truth. This is evolution. It's been going on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And people, they get up in the morning and life is terrible. The world is terrible. And I'm thinking, no, that's not the case at all. Life is beautiful. Yes, the wrenches get thrown into it every once in a while. Sometimes we emotionally or mentally get a little battered in that. But there are beautiful moments, right? When the babies are born. One of the happiest days of my life was my wedding day. You know, I would think that that's one to chalk up there. And if I had given up as a teenager, as a young adult, I wouldn't have made it to the best day of my life, one of the very best days of my life. Since then, I've had lots of beautiful moments, but some of those moments are beautiful and we don't look at it that way because we're just beating us up for the little things that didn't go on our way. So it doesn't matter what goodies come across your path, you're just going to still think life is miserable. And you just look at it as, instead of a gift, you look at it as an advantage, something to take advantage of, something to make the miserable feel a little bit better, right? Hello, Kathy. Hello, everybody. Yeah, and I've been delving into it today, and yesterday I was delving into it a little bit deep. But today I happened on to an article a couple of weeks ago, and it was about a gentleman who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1981, and he was a scientist, and His research was on the idea of split brain syndrome, they call it. It's actually a procedure. I can't pronounce the name of it. It's a part in the brain, the corpus callosums. Now, it might be something that might be relevant to somebody out there because I found it so fascinating. It's actually an operation that they give to people who have epilepsy, right? To help stop and control seizures. So, what they do is they separate the two parts of the brain, the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. And this scientist loved brains and he found it fascinating. He did lots of experiments with, right? It's not nice to say that we still use guinea pigs and rabbits and mice, right? To do these experiments, right? These trials that we do before we put medication or procedures out to the world. But in his research, he was using cats, and he would split the brain, that stem that separates the two brains, and he would do experiments with the cats, and they found that cats lived perfectly good lives, but they weren't perfect, right? They were comfortable, they didn't seem maladjusted, but there were aspects of the cats afterwards that they noticed was quite different. He noticed that both parts of the brain after that operation, they worked separately. So he what's the word I'm looking for? There's a word I'm looking for. If you can think of it for me, that would be great. But he came to the conclusion, he realized that those two brains were like a Siamese twin in one body, that they worked separately, that the left brain could see and or could speak, and the right brain could see, right? But the right brain couldn't see, and the left brain wait, the left right brain couldn't speak and the left brain couldn't see. So I went, is that ever interesting? And because he's a scientist and he won the Nobel Peace Prize for this discovery, like an actual discovery. So yes, people who have epilepsy or suffer with seizures, they have this procedure done, but they're like two people in one brain and yet or one body, but they live their whole lives together, still feeling and living as if they're one person. They don't recognize it's like two different beings. And I thought, isn't that interesting? That is super interesting because you guys hear me talk about those other parts of me all the time, right? And so I was wondering, I said, coming from a dynamic family, I call it a dynamic family. I says, well, I wonder if trauma or who somebody who gets in a serious accident and gets smacked around, or a football player out in the field, and how they get those brain injuries. This is why they wear the helmets now and stuff. Like, could that tear apart the two sides of the brain and do the same thing, for somebody who doesn't have seizures, who doesn't have that operation done, but still finds themselves sometimes thinking that maybe, right, they have this aspect of themselves where they have split brain syndrome, right? And they said no, that doesn't happen because it's so inside of there. It would, you had an injury, or if you had been physically abused, or if you'd, out on the football field and you got smacked around a little bit, you probably wouldn't be able to survive the injury that it would take to separate the two brains. And I said, oh, okay, then. That's pretty interesting. So I Googled, I love Googling, right? I love using Gemini and working on these things, these curious things, because you guys know I work in emotions and I want to understand the brain, right? And, Carl Jung didn't happen onto this kind of information because this gentleman didn't discover it until the late 70s. He was doing these studies, and Carl Jung was already long gone, right? And he actually won the Nobel Peace Prize in 81. So what I said then is, if you if you have um, have not had this operation, if you've never had this operation and you felt like you had this syndrome, um, is it possible that you could improve on it, right? If it's not separated, but you feel that it's separated, right? That you feel that there's another part of you inside. Is it possible to improve it? And Gemini came up right away, says, oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, let me just pull up something here and I'll read a little bit of you. It's in my other main account here, my documents. I had to save it. It was so interesting. And then I saved it to my X, right, which is Elon Musk's um, social platform, because it was just so interesting. And now it's not there. Oh my goodness. Just when I think that I've got so many things going on here, I don't want to leave you guys while I'm searching for it, because it should be like the very one of the very first things coming down, because people do get in accidents, right? And they do kind of jiggle things around every once in a while. And you know and they might have these issues and these feelings and these ideas of like you're speaking to yourself, that you're speaking to someone or something else, right? Why is it not here? Did it actually disappear? Oh no, because I saved it to a different account. That's why. Duh. Let me just come in here and oh my goodness. You guys would have found it so interesting too. Here it is. Okay. So my question, even left my question up there. Um, if there are limitations due to neglect, injury, or abuse growing up, and that separation in the brain didn't happen, but right, is there a way to improve it, right? And the answer came back, yes, absolutely, because the brain hasn't actually been physically severed. There is a sign of potential for improvement. The human brain possesses a remarkable lifelong ability to reorganize, adapt, and repair a phenomenon known as neuroplasticity. And I've heard this word many times. I'm going to delve into it even deeper now because this little munchie got me, right? With the right interventions, the brain can form new neural pathways, which means the brain is smart. So if the two brain parts are kind of jiggled around, they say even though it's not severed, because of the trauma in the accident, because of the experiences that we have, 11% of that cognitive is is gone. But because the brain is so smart on its own, it's so smart that it will find new ways to communicate with us, and to find ways to make that repair in our body and give our body the things that we need, which is the priority is like oxygen, right? And I follow a gentleman who does breath work, super nice guy, funny, smart, and his breath work is absolutely amazing. And I found him quite a while ago, but I was doing the breath work and I found it really, really helped me. I didn't understand why it really helped me, but it was because I was iron deficient. You guys have been hanging out with me, right? I went to see my doctor. My doctor tells me I'm seriously iron deficient. Again, doing that Googling and stuff. The reason I'm having these issues, right, is the lack of oxygen, because that's what iron does for you. It distributes oxygen to all your vital organs. And that brain smarty pants found a way to communicate to say, okay, Cindy, you're 65 years old. It's time to go get yourself 64. Let's not rush it. You're 64 years old. It's time for you to find yourself a family doctor. And then I found one, and a very smart one too, because she did all the right tests and she found right away what the problem was the iron deficiency, which comes directly from that gastric bypass I had in the 80s. And I was taking iron for years. I was taking iron and I've never had any issues. And slowly I just went down to taking it periodically, every once in a while for a week. I'd take a course of it. But I didn't recognize that I needed that iron all the time because of that operation, because it gives you malabsorption. You don't absorb vitamins and minerals and food very well, right? And I was on my iron. I've been on my iron for a few days now. And the first thing I noticed, you guys, is my breathing. Like I'm noticing, like just sitting here, I go, like you see those ads on TV with the little magnets open up your nostrils. That's what I feel like. I feel like I'm getting a ton of air, and my system feels pretty good in this moment. It's only been a few days, and I'm not supposed to really be feeling the effects for it for a couple of weeks at the very most. I have to take these things for at least, well, I got to take these things for like 3 months at least at this grade, and I might come down a little bit after that. But right now, I have to take these high doses every day, and I'm already noticing the difference so much that my brain is just going 100 miles an hour too. And I happened on to this great piece of information about how important it is for us to take care of ourselves, because if we have issues, if we truly have lost 11%, that's a big chunk that we're not paying attention to, right? It's a communication issue between the two sides of the brain. That's what it is. And we need both of those to be working in unison together, right? Working together. And yes, they're working together, but not working to the highest point of where we should be at, right? So it gave me lots of ideas and things that I want to do. I don't know why I want to do research on it, but when my love for history, and we go back in the, you know, the different ages in history and the different spans of famine, and where we are at in our evolution in comparison to where we're at right now, right? All our food in the supermarket, they say a lot of it comes from the processed food. And poor people, they can't eat that healthy stuff. And if they can, right, most people in low income, and I understand this because I lived most part of my life in that low income status, even though there were times I did have money, but that money didn't go towards healthy eating. It went to, like, I wasn't going to spend $3 on a head of lettuce when I can get box of Kraft dinner, and then I could put $2 in a slot machine, right? And that's where our addictions come from too, because we're not communicating, right? It says we become kind of like the rebellious bad child to ourselves, right? That we purposely misbehave and we make it into habits, right? And our addictions too. So it just makes me, I don't know, maybe a little bit with myself that I happen onto these ideas about peeling off all these habitual, right, tendencies that I've had in my life. And I've had many, 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 right? And to get to this point in time where Cindy, right, the everyday Joe, could happen on to something, an article like this, and be able to delve into it myself because it's relevant to me. I don't want to lose 11% of the capacity of my brain. The brain cannot heal structurally if it still feels like it's in a state of survival, right? So we're talking about trauma and complex trauma. Specialized therapies can help calm the overactive threat detection systems, my hypervigilance, you guys, right? And redirect energy toward growth and repair. Right? I love Gemini. They gave me some suggestions. Trauma informed therapies, listing some of them here, cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Rewiring through enrichment, secure and stable relationships is a big one. To find relationships in our lives that we can feel safe and we can feel valued in, right? And feel like we're valued in them. And again, mindfulness and meditation, like it really, like a lot of things, and people attribute some of these things that they work in their life into religion and into spirituality, and yet they're scientific, right, solutions for a very real and true problem out there. The realistic outlook. While neuroplasticity means improvement is always possible, the timeline and extent of recovery depend on several variables, including the duration of the early trauma, right? And when the interventions begin, and also individual genetic factors. So that's when I was talking about that epigenetics, that's just generational trauma that's just passed down from one generation to another, right? Oh my goodness, it's so, right? However, the brain remains plastic well into the adulthood, meaning it is never too late to experience meaningful recovery in cognitive, emotional, and behavioral function. So, this is a real thing. I love, right? I'm a realist in life. I truly am a realist in life, but I know that a lot of the subjects that I delve into are out there, but they're only out there because they just haven't been discovered yet, right? And here's something that's totally scientifically proven. I mean, the guy actually won the Nobel, no, what's it? Nobel Peace, Nobel Peace. I'm sorry. Again, his Nobel Peace Prize, right? And again, his name is Dr. Sperry, Sperry. If you guys want to delve into that topic, I wanted to throw it out there. It's a gift. It was a gift to me. I think there might be somebody or lots of people out there who have issues in their life and they don't understand what they are, where they're coming from, or even if it can be resolved, right? And here it is, little old Cindy stumbled on to something that amazing. I'm delving in deep into this subject, but I just wanted to throw it out there, for people. If you have had this procedure, maybe your doctor might have discussed it to you, but if it was before the 1980s, right, this is fairly new scientific information there. So it might not have ever come across your path, but right, nutritionally you can do things about it. You can do breath work, you can get therapy, you can calm yourself down. Sometimes it's just knowing what the problem is. For myself, that's everything. If you could understand what it is, right? It's the questions that drive you crazy, right? And, if you can even make yourself feel a little bit better, right? Don't drive yourself crazy if you don't get it, right? Because I happened onto this information a couple of weeks ago. I've gone back into it a couple of times, but today it kind of was understood. Today I was able to dive into it a little bit. uh okay. um oh, I love that, you guys, that you never give up. That's amazing. Tammy says, yes, I understand that split brain syndrome. Oh, you've heard of it before. And that surgery, I learned about that when I became a severe direct care aide, where I worked at an adult facility. Really, Tammy? Oh my goodness. Isn't that incredible? Yeah, and it's so good just to understand that we can get the work done. And not only can we get the work done, that other part of us that we don't know how to communicate, and that's where we talk about serendipities and breadcrumbs and those little coincidences and things. That's the other side of the brain trying to communicate with us to give us those answers. To say, Cindy, get yourself to a doctor. You're 64 years old. I need you to discover what this whole issue is. And once you got that iron in your system, you're going to feel better. And then you're going to do some Google, and one thing is going to lead to another, and you're going to end up in Wikipedia. And really understanding what's going on. Yeah, so cool. Those breath exercises are good for a person. It can be very beneficial in many ways. Yeah, I've been doing breath work, not religiously. I'm doing more than I ever have, but sometimes it's just finding the right company to do it. And I had this idea. There's a beautiful park. It's in one of the expensive areas where they have all the big mansions, the old mansions and stuff. But I guess when somebody passed away, they had some land and they had a big mansion, and he left the mansion to the city, and he paid to have the mansion torn down, and the property was turned into a little city park along the river. Just a beautiful. They left all the wrought iron gates up and everything, but it's just a beautiful little park and tons of big elm and oak trees in there right along the river. They've got lots of benches and a little trail that you can walk on. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is the perfect place for me to take my newest book called, I don't know if anybody's read it, but this is the book I'm reading now, the 10th Gate, and it looks interesting. It's I think it's a book. I haven't even started reading it yet, but I think tomorrow I'm going to take a bike ride, or maybe I'll walk to the park and sit in a bench there for an hour or two and just enjoy my book, enjoy the trees, enjoy the river, listening to the birds, right? It is along a main drag, so you do hear the cars, but not a lot because there's so many trees in there that it kind of blocks out the side or the sound and the sight of the road, right? But the birds love it in there. The squirrels love it in it. Beautiful plants, very well groomed. Like the city takes very, I don't know if he left a lot of money for them to take care of the park, or if the city is actually just taking on the responsibility of caring for the park financially themselves. But they do a beautiful job in the landscaping. When I was walking through the park the other day, uh, the guy's truck was in there, and his whole back of his truck was full of plants, and he was filling up all these little rock laid gardens in the park with different plants and flowers, and it was absolutely beautiful. So I thought I would do that tomorrow. Now I don't know why I was talking about that. Yeah, just about getting out in Mother Nature. Let me close this curtain. The sun is starting to interfere. Yeah, the just the fresh air, connecting with Mother Nature calms the system, and it also explains, why it's so important to connect with Mother Nature. It's for exactly this reason that 11% of our brain capacity in that separation of the two sides. Right now, it's not a true separation, but there is cognitive issues because of the trauma that we go through, right? And it doesn't mean it has to be specifically when you're a kid. It could be like post traumatic stress disorder, like police officers or ambulance drivers or people who experience, scary experiences like earthquakes or terrorism and all kinds of stuff, right? So yeah, just to practice these things, eating better, making sure you're taking your iron, right? Especially if you know you've gone through trauma, make sure you're taking your iron to take care of yourself. Eat well, your vitamins, your fresh air, your breathing, right? Your breathing exercises. Yeah, helps out lots, you guys. Okay. When I was also a social ed teacher, we worked with cognitive behaviors and cognitive therapy and other areas too. Tammy, oh my goodness, why are you not in thought leadership? Right? Like, you know, instead of physically, right? It's your choices in life, but you have the knowledge, you have the know how. You are somebody who was, if they were online, you wouldn't have issues with anybody taking you offline because you're certified. You have, right? You're educated. This has been your career in your life, right? That you could actually divvy out that information and you could save so many so many lives. I know it's not everybody's thing, but man, Tammy, yeah, you've got some knowledge going on there. You're the female version of Andrew. Hi, Cindy, Owen, Kathy, and Tammy. I took a nap before the live stream, set my alarm, and actually turned off the clock. No worries, Andrew. Right? Didn't have to set your alarm. Maybe you needed that nap, right? Rest is important, 100%. Yeah, but it's interesting the things that I love delving in to this topic of emotions and you know in living the experience of coming from a dynamic family to recognize that you know we don't always get it right. Everybody makes mistakes, and then sometimes instead of just using that energy to blame, right, revenge, to sue, take them to court, separate, make it even a bigger mess. Sometimes it's just better to see what can we do to make it better. That should be the question. What can we do to make it better? Yeah, that was kind of the idea. So I just wanted to kind of shoot that out in the beginning of my live. 10 minutes, right? Oh, no, it hasn't been 10 minutes. Oh my goodness, it's been 40 minutes. It's been 40 minutes since I've been talking about this. It was exciting. It was a munchie for me. You guys, that sometimes I delve into these content and it's like I'm like a pit bull with a piece of raw meat in my mouth, right? And just to happen on to something that just gives you that really, right? And sometimes you get drawn into these ideas that it comes from religion or spirituality or out of space or whatever it is, some know it all out there, right? That it is actually legit. And when we say that, people wake up and go, this is life is terrible, right? Like, yeah, try going back 1,000 years ago. I mean, just go back 150 years ago in England when there wasn't proper infrastructure. That actually came in by Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, and they kind of had this idea that they're going to try and keep people in the indoors instead of being outdoors, right? So that they can get this infrastructure all filled out, fixed up, like because they were still dumping stuff, right? Their toiletries and stuff. They needed to fix all of that, right? Because there was so much disease going on, and the plague and stuff is all caused by rats. And when you got rats in the sewers and stuff, you're putting a whole country in risk, possibly the whole world at risk. So they had this idea of, well, ornaments, doodads. That was Queen Victoria and Prince Albert's idea, right? Because they wanted people to entertain at home inside so that they could get that infrastructure fixed up. Now, why did I bring up Queen Victoria and Prince Albert? Da da da. Oh, in going back 100 years and seeing, like, oh my goodness, would you like to live back then when you had to do your thing in a bucket and then go take that bucket somewheres to properly get rid of it, or have no electricity, right? That your day started at 6 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning when it was pitch black, and then you got home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it was pitch black, right? There was, right? People back then, they probably couldn't afford candles and stuff. Then you would be saying, life is terrible. This is the worst time in history. No, it gets better. They fixed the infrastructure. We are now consumers of doodads, right? We're becoming eclectic. We're spending more time indoors, but we got flushing toilets, we got running water, we got electricity, we've got cars, we got televisions. Televisions were brand new. When I was a kid, black and white TV. Now they're like flat screen. It would feel like space age, right? Going back then. Absolutely, absolutely crazy how far we have come. Like people who are alive right now who have got diabetes would not be alive because the the vaccine for diabetes wasn't even discovered until the early 20th century, right? Like we keep moving forward. Airplanes, vacations, right? That so many telephones. Think about the telephone, right? I remember having a story told to me by a gentleman. He was 92 years old. I was managing a restaurant at the time, and I would used to sit with the regulars and they would tell me story, and we had a senior hour at dinner time where the seniors would come in and they get a discounted dinner and stuff, and they would come in and I would sit with them, and I made friends with a lot of these customers. And I remembered this one gentleman. He was, like I said, 92 years old, and he told me this story how he came to Canada in like 1916 or something like that. And when he came here, there were no telephones. There, right? He came here and he left his son and his wife in Europe. I can't remember where in Europe. He left them there, but they were supposed to come like 6 months later. After he got there, he just wanted to come early, get the land, get the house ready, right? And get them all set up before they came. He had already prepaid for their boat tickets on the boat. The war started, right? And when the war started, the wife got scared and freaked out about getting on the boat, but there was no way to get a letter to her husband in Canada. And in the last minute she canceled it because the war broke out. 19, I guess the First World War. The war broke out, right? And she was so scared, so she sent him a letter, but it takes months because it has to go by ship, and because there's a stall in how things are moving. When the war started, who's to say how long it took? Well, that ship took off to Canada without her, and it was bombed and it sank. Everybody on board died in that boat. And it was fairly big news because it was fairly early in the war. And and the news finally got to him, because it was in the newspaper. Every once in a while he'd go to town and there in the newspaper the ship that his wife and his son. He was devastated. His whole life fell apart in that one moment, and he didn't recognize that he didn't know that his wife had chickened out on going on that ship. His wife knew that it was big news, that he was going to hear about it and he was going to be devastated by it. So the first ship, she drew up the courage, the first ship that she could get her and her son on, she did. And she got out there, but she really didn't know where she was going, right? She knew the name of the town at that time. Not all the towns had names yet. Usually they named the town after whoever the the postmaster was, right? And so she just went there and she just asked questions, asked questions, asked questions. And he just bumped into her in the street. He said, After that experience of seeing his wife and his son, he said it didn't matter what devastation, what struggle, what horrible thing ever happened in his life again, that it would be nothing. It would be absolute. He would ride it through and he would smile through it and he would be optimistic, because if he thought the worst thing in the entire life that possibly could happen because of his brain, right? That it didn't happen. He said he could go through anything. And he passed that on to his family, and his family expanded, because I knew his whole family. I forget them now, but I remember his name was Peter. I remember his name was Peter. I remember that now, because he used to come in all the time with one of his kids, or a caregiver would bring him in for dinner. But that idea that, we can't give up when terrible things happen. Good things still happen. He could have given up. He could have moved. He could have left that province completely, because that farm and that homestead that he was building was for his family, right? And he could have given up. And I'm sure it was, oh my goodness, it must have been 6 months or a year later before she got there, right? And that's that idea, my sister did the same thing. I was talking to my sister the other day, and we were visiting, and she is doing she's doing a lot better, right? She's doing a lot better. Her mentality and her emotions, she's a lot more cheer cheerful, optimistic, right? But she was saying that when she had her triple heart bypass, she said after that experience, anything else that she has to go through, and she's still been getting hit, right? With little things, big things, right? When you are always laid up with something, becomes discouraging, right? It does become discouraging. But she says no matter what, after that experience, she can go through anything, and she's not giving up. She's riding the wave. She's adapting and conquering, right? And things are getting better. That same operation, right, that my sister went through, she flew through it with flying colors. Best post op patient ever. She was out of there in like a week. Triple heart bypass. She was in the hospital for a week, and then they let her go home. She probably fibbed a lot, made people think she was feeling a whole lot better than she did, just because she didn't like hospitals. She didn't want to be there, right? She would take care of herself at home. But in that experience that she had, my father had that same operation. His was not a triple, he just had one bypass done. And my father didn't make it, right? And that operation my father had was not even 30 years before my sister had, maybe 40 years before my sister had her operation, right? That's how much we have expanded in our knowledge, in that, that idea of our evolution getting better. I really believe that, if we are communicating in some way with something beyond ourselves, that it's something in the future, right? But because people couldn't even fathom how far and how magnificent that we were going to get in the future, right? That we would actually look at aliens and go, oh my goodness, outer space, when really an alien might just be what we look like 100,000 or 200,000 years from now, right? It's like the Jetsons and that television monitor where George is talking to his boss on the monitor, like it wasn't even invented. then. It was just in somebody's imagination. And in that same show, The Jetsons, was the maid who was a robot. Robots hadn't even been invented. They didn't even have toys at that time as an as something to play with. Right? It was just in somebody's imagination. And here it is to be true today that these things are actually right going on in our lives. They actually have robot doctors where the doctor is at home or on vacation or in meetings and stuff, and he has a robot that just goes room to room to room checking on his patients, right? And it's just his face on a monitor. It's absolutely incredible. And then you think in the Jetsons, they have that airplane that's a car that George Jetson just jumped in his car and then flew away to work. How long before that happens, right? We're flying all over the place, right? Maybe those cars are actually going to be drones. I think it'll be something like drones, but drones that are big enough to hold a whole family, probably, right? And also, I think that'll be a lot better for the environment to have the drones rather than emitting something that's not good for the air, because you can't be doing that, right? I hear that in by 2030, all cars, all new cars, right? If you have an old car, it's a different story, but all new cars have to be at least 50% electric, right? And that's a good idea. I think that is a really good idea. You couldn't really do it for totally electric, not right now, somewhere's down the future. They just haven't figured out how to keep that battery going if somebody wants to go from California to Florida, right? That you would actually have to make pit stops along the way to make sure that your car is charged. You don't want to be stranded out in the middle of the highway without any battery charge to get you home, right? Or get you to somewheres that has that technology. I'm right here in the cities and stuff. Yes, they do have places where you can charge your car. If you have co-op stations and stuff like that on the highways, yes, you can find places where you can plug your car in for an hour and maybe get yourself another 400 miles or something. But right, this is all taking time. We want everything yesterday, right? We have no patience. And I think in our evolution, in that idea that it's something in the future, it isn't that. I follow a gentleman, his name's Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if any of you guys know who he is. He talks about reverse engineering. And I'm thinking, right? Is it possible that whoever, whatever, is just, we have to reverse engineer to get back to that state where we're supposed to be at as the, I don't know, the be all to end all, the whatever, whoever, right? Yeah, it's interesting. Hi, Eugene. I hope everybody's having a great night tonight. Oh, William's here too. Hello, William. Did you speak at the convention, William? Did you speak at the convention? Victorian history is fascinating, but no way would I want to live in that time and place. 100%, Andrew. And here's another one for you. In that day and age, everything was so dirty. Now we're going to go back a little bit further, the 1700s, 1600s, maybe early 1800s. Everything was so dirty, right? There was all kinds of horrible things that were dumped out on windows into the streets. The rats were roaming around. People didn't believe in baths because there really wasn't any daily access to fresh water unless it rained. And if it rained, you're going to smell like a wet dog. People ran around with little sniff bottles and rings with perfumes in them and medallions with perfumes in them, right? Because everybody stank, right? It didn't matter how pretty you dressed up. You see those beautiful ball gowns and stuff, and those outfits and everything that the men wore, they were absolutely beautiful to look at. But to stand next to, really seriously, those beautiful tapestries that they had on the walls, you guys, they would go behind those tapestries and do their thing in the on the floor behind the tapestries, right? They would do that. That's why it's really hard to find some of those beautiful tapestries because they were meant, well, they weren't meant, but as soon as it was used that way, right? And you can imagine what these castles and these beautiful grounds that these counts and stuff had, what they would actually smell like. That's why they always had different homes. They all had their regular household, then they had like their summer household, right? And then they had a vacation home. It's because they had to leave them so that the cleaning crews can come in and clean up the stink, right? To clean up that mess. But the story I was going to tell, everybody appreciated the white. Everybody appreciated the clean. So you got to think when I talk about processed foods and stuff and how we're not eating properly and a lot of our health issues is coming from the fact that we're not eating properly. We're not taking the right vitamins and the doses that we're supposed to be taking it. Guilty, right? Still shaking my head. I'm not beating myself up over that, but I feel bad because it's something I should have known because at one time I did. And it started with just being lazy and feeling good. Then maybe it might have got to the point of, oh my goodness, I don't need to spend that money. That money could go into a slot machine, right? Instead of buying this vitamin every month and then totally forgetting that I was supposed to be taking that specific vitamin. And then, right? I don't know how long it's been, you guys. 10 years? It's been a long time since I have been consistently taking my iron, and I feel bad, right? That I was neglectful to myself in that. That was kind of a disservice to myself. I'm not blaming myself. Accidents happen. We're just stupid humans. All of us, right? All of us make these silly mistakes in our lives. But it's kind of amazing when we can stumble on to the answers, that we can stumble on to smart people like Andrew and Tammy and Kathy and William, all these people that have these amazing experiences that we don't get to have, but we get to live vicariously through each other and be the evidence, right? And the example for each other in how possibly we can, right, do a little bit better by ourselves. I am a community project. I freely admit that I am a community project, but let's get back to that idea of how everybody wanted everything white and clean and sparkly, right? You know what they used to do? They used to put plaster in flour to make it white, right? They used to put plaster in flour to make it white because it looked fresh, it looked clean, it was nice and heavy. They could charge more money for it. Can you imagine getting a loaf of bread and half of that bread or a quarter of that loaf of bread is full of plaster? They would put all kinds of stuff in the flour to extend it, to keep it light. I heard they just ground up grass and all kinds of stuff. Use bleach and bleach different ingredients to make it super white, right? And they still bleach bread to this day. That's your white bread, is your bleached bread, right? I like my grain breads, but I'm guilty. I eat the white bread too, the sandwich bread. I do that too. But, it's in waking up to some of these ideas of what we can do better. They also would put, when the milk curdled, they would put borax in the milk, and it would make the milk last a couple of more days. If they put borax in it, it would curdle and go bad, and they would feed this to the kids, and the kids actually would die from this, right? We did so many stupid things, like bloodletting, you guys. Can you imagine? We thought it was the right thing to do. We thought we were saving lives when we were doing the bloodletting, and that was just like the silliest, stupidest thing that we could ever do. But in our evolution, we're just getting better and better and better. I love talking about evolution, but it is that idea, just to hold on. Do the best by yourself as you possibly can, because you never know when that solution, right? That Lotto 649, that's our lottery here in Canada. Western Canada is our Lotto 649. And you might hit that. You never know the windfalls that come into your life, because there's so many good things that come into our lives at any time. But, when life kicks us and the natural aspects of life, which are not fun, come into our lives, we let ourselves crash in that, don't we? We let ourselves crash in that. We dwell on that, terribly dwell. I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that too. Oh my goodness, I put myself in such a state when my marriage fell apart. Oh my goodness. And yet all the answers were right there, all the tools. If I was to do anything that would help or improve my life, they were there. I just wasn't noticing them. Why? Because I was deficient 11% in my cognitive ideas, right? That my right hemisphere, my left hemisphere were not communicating well, right? Because of growing up in my dynamic family, in the experiences that I had. And if I had known all the wonderful experiences that were going to come into my life, I might not have worried about it so much. And I probably would have done a lot better by myself. I'm grateful, right? That I did really good. Smoking cigarettes, how much does that cut oxygen off, you guys? Right? I quit smoking cigarettes over 20 years ago. I haven't had a cigarette. Can you imagine being in the state of being iron deficient the way that I was, that I come to discover that I was? Yeah, I was so low that the doctor had to call me right away and phone in a prescription of high content iron for me. So now I'm on an iron program. I don't mind, because I like my vitamins, and I love the idea that we discovered this when we did, instead of me having a heart attack, or right, or kidney issues or liver issues, or right, having a body full of inflammation, not having breathing issues, my brain not getting enough oxygen. It's amazing. Sometimes it's just holding on, right? Until that answer does come across our path. And that's the truth. You just got to laugh at yourself sometimes. I laugh at myself all the time, all the time. But it makes me feel like I am no worse than anybody else, right? Because in some places people are not getting those messages in any way. It was kind of why I started the conversation the way that I did, because that could help somebody, just one person, right? It's worth it, and you know it's pretty incredible. I'm just delving into the topic now. I've only been into it for a couple of weeks, off and on, not regularly. I suspect for the next few days I will be deep into it, and maybe look at some different. I wanted to Google, like, this gentleman, I believe, has passed away now. He won, because he hasn't won any awards since. Let me come down here. um, he's won so many awards, you guys. His last award was in 1993 when he won the Lifetime Achievement Award in the American Psychological Association. But he's got a list here of like 40 different awards that he's won in his lifetime. Isn't that a magnificent life lived? I hope he was happy in his personal life. It doesn't matter how much you contribute to the world. It's great because it helps in evolution. But I hope his personal life was joyful, that he had lots of kids and a beautiful wife and great grandchildren and vacations and nice home, right? Because that's important, right? Because the human does matter, right? The human does matter. We're all here as stewards, but it's in that example, and that evidence that each one of us carry in our experiences and in our storytelling. And isn't it amazing that we guys have this platform that we can just kind of on Sunday nights just talk to each other? Like, it's kind of, I feel kind of great because Tammy kind of seconded that with me when in her confirmation that she had heard about this too, right? Because lots of people would have, I could have this conversation, oh, Cindy's just talking off the top of her head, she has no idea what she's talking about. But when you have somebody who's actually even more qualified kind of second that, right, it kind of, right, keeps me feeling that I am on the right track. So I do appreciate. I'm just going to give you a little shout out, Tammy. That was pretty awesome of you. But the world is getting better, right? There's always going to be pain in it. There always will be, right? We don't live forever, and we never know when our last day is going to be, or what day is going to be the last day for somebody else, or what brick somebody's going to tumble over, or the accidents, or the wars, or the bombs go off, or the tsunamis, the volcano. These things, right, are going to happen for a very long time. But as we move forward, we're going to find better solutions. A lot of that's just in our mentality, right? And how our brains work a little bit better. Maybe we will all become non-confrontational. Wouldn't that be great? That we could just get to the point where we're just competing each other in a sportsmanlike way, right? Good sportsmanship, put people in the ring. Maybe not, but that's not a good example because I don't like the box. I know people like boxing and fighting and stuff like that. That's not my that's not my thing. I don't like to see anybody to physically get hurt in any way, even if it is in sports, because I understand lots of people find that as entertainment. I mean, me as a kid, the only reason I could tolerate sitting on the couch with my dad watching, right, hockey night in Canada, the only way I could manage is just to watch the fights that go on when the teams would go off on each other in fighting, and they didn't have helmets or anything at that time. And if we would find that entertainment, the wrestling, right? Yes, we understand it's phony baloney, that it's kind of staged and stuff like that. But people still get hurt, right? Don't they? people have to retire from their career in wrestling because they landed the wrong way and they popped their knees out, or they hit their head badly, or you think about the construction workers, how they physically work so hard. And I always joked all the time, no wonder men are just broken old men by the time they're 30 years old, right? Because they overwork themselves, right? And sometimes life calls for that, right? Where we don't really have a much choice. There ain't going to be a roof over our head, or somebody's going to take over the country or something. That in that self defense or defense that we do overextend ourselves. But, moving forward, like, there's going to come a day when we're all going to change, because we've changed so much better. My goodness, go back 2,000 years to the time of the Egyptians, and right in the Middle East and Turkey and the Persians and stuff. Oh, it was just a big country grab, right? And it never ended. The Romans, like, it was just a never ending takeover. And it was brutal, like, it was ugly brutal. They didn't care if you were a little child or a woman or a man or an old woman. It was there, what they just blanked themselves out, so they didn't even consider it as anything except animals, right? That they knew what they were doing, but in order for their to emotionally handle what they were doing, because of course I'm sure there was lots. We talk about trauma, complex trauma now. Can you imagine back then, where you would see a whole family being wiped out or something? That would just be, oh my goodness, right? We are doing so much better now. We are. And we're only going to get better and better and better, right? We are. Yeah, that's a little confirmation from me. Let me have a sip of my juice and we'll go on to a different topic. Mm, it's good. Oh, and they said, like, some of these signals too that we have is things like crunching ice, pica. And I have pica, right? Like, I haven't had an episode of it for a very long time. I don't know why, being iron deficient, I should have had. But I think it was only in my mindset, that I don't want to pick up new coping mechanisms. I just want to get rid of coping mechanisms and habitual habits that I have right now, just to get rid of them, right? That I could be that person that could have these kind of conversations and truly be that example, right? That evidence for other people that it can be done, right? It's why I don't mind talking about faults, because, you know, faults can be something in the past that can benefit somebody in the present or in the future, right? That people just need sometimes to recognize that they're not the only ones in this doo, the only ones that think this way, right? Let me come down here. I don't want to fall behind in the comments because I'm on week number 5, you guys, being on top of my comments. Oh yeah, I asked William if he had spoken in the convention. A big help for London was getting the air cleaned from that Oh, the coal smoke! I never even thought about that. All those children, those little kids, right? 7, 8 years old, because they were small and could get into small places, and they were working in the mines, you guys, right? Now there are laws that protect the kids like that. Look what happened to um, what was that clothing designer? Peter Nygaard, right? Who had the clothing factories that were run by kids, right? That these these things are getting shut down now and people get into trouble, right? I know I was able to work pretty early, but shortly after I started working, they put new laws into effect that you had to be 16 years old before you could actually legally work. But that was a long time ago. But yeah, I never even thought about the coal mines, Andrew. I saw part of an episode. Do you watch that? Uh, what is it called? Time Team. That it's a television show in Great Britain, and they travel and they do archaeological digs. They dig up old castles. They look up for old Neolithic sites and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I watch that show all the time, right? And they got interesting characters, but they find some neat places. I was watching one yesterday and they found I had to Google it because I was wondering what that era was of Beowulf, right? Um, I've got a few notebooks here. I got one notebook for my camping spots. I got one book here for different trailers that I'm looking at. And what was the age? The Saxons. Like, I never researched the era of the Saxons before. And I was wondering if that era of when the story of Beowulf was the Saxons. In my mind, I was kind of uh, imagining what their buildings looked like, and they were digging up a big longhouse in an episode that I was watching yesterday, and it kind of seemed to me it was like the movie Beowulf that I had seen, and maybe those were the Saxons, right? So I had to Google, and sure enough, it was. And they based the movie Lord of the Rings on the Saxon era too, and I thought that was really interesting. But that's an era I haven't really researched very much. I haven't been inclined. Like I have to be kind of drawn into it, right? I have to find some. Ooh, that's curious. Oh, I wonder what that's all about, right? And then I go into it, and I guess that's just me having little conversations with myself, right? I feel better about having those conversations with myself starting today. I will have a few more of them, right? Because I have had, that's what complex trauma is, it's in those childhood experiences that carry over into our adulthoods. And even though, right, we we carry a lot of that in us, that that's how the brain works. It finds a new route and it heals itself. Yeah, so I think that's pretty amazing that we can be our own teachers, right? We can um, find answers for ourselves in this age of AI learning, where everybody is just saying everybody's spending so much time online. It's the worst thing in the world, right? And a lot of it is, but it's just about, right? It's just new, you guys. We're like the guinea pigs, right? So, yes, we're making mistakes and failing, and right, there's some things that aren't so good, but countries are picking up on that. I mean, the kids are not allowed to use um, any kind of devices until I think the age is 16 years old. 16 years old. Here in Manitoba, they're working on planning on limiting the age that kids could use devices. I know. Oh, somebody here told me. Was it Andrew or Owen? Told me there's a province here in Canada that's already limiting the amount of time that the kids can be online. There is, right? But it's in practicing, seeing how things work out. Then we could put little rules and limitations on things. But there's a lot of benefit. Like, I wouldn't be sitting here right now, you guys. Oh my goodness, I would have been such a that's the L for loser, right? I would have been, there is no doubt in my mind that my life would have gone right down the toilet. I would have never gotten off of video lottery terminals. I'd still be smoking. I would, oh my goodness, still be on payday loans. I would probably, right, be just into relationships and just, right, having somebody take care of my needs except for myself, taking care of my own needs. And whether I'm doing a good job at it or not, right? I'm doing it on my own and I'm bumbling along. And yes, I'm making mistakes, but I'm also grateful that I'm doing some course correcting and I'm happening on to some great information and building really great relationships. And I get to still be a YouTube creator, that I'm still, after 14 years, I still have my brand, which is absolutely amazing, right? Lots of people, most people, I think, would have just given up by now. But I'm not a giver upper. And I'm at that point now, like I was saying earlier in the week, that I'm just, this is just part of my life. Of course, it's going to change, right? My life is going to change. The content is going to change. I hope I'm going to be exploring more of the outdoors soon. But you know what? I'm still here and I'm still chugging along and I'm still optimistic for all those good days that are happening, that I get to live vicariously through other people's experiences and then also have other people live vicariously through my experiences too. Super grateful. Okay, you guys, enough of that. Um, I saw part of an episode of The Crown when there was an inversion and the smog remained in the air and got even worse. Oh, I couldn't imagine that. It's awful when the forest fires go on and it just, the whole city is just full of smoke and you can taste it and it's on your furniture. You got to dust everything and people are outside wearing face masks, right? Aw. Um, oh, you watched it live? Well, yeah. See, part of the digital age, right? Lots of people don't have that capacity to get out and do this traveling, and we can travel and we can go into other countries and we can do conventions. I'm doing a workshop this week, so it's kind of interesting that we can all still be a part of the world if we're incapacitated in some way. Lots of people are busy, have busy lives. Some people are not financially in a position to go travel the world. Some people are physically not able to travel the world, but to be able to do it from your own desk, how amazing is that? That's the world that we live in now. It offers up gifts, not just crappy stuff, but it offers up gifts too. Um, Hello, Eugene. I love the Jetsons. Who's this? Coming back here a little bit. Oh my goodness, I better hurry up. Um, I'm really far behind. Uh, I remember an episode of The Jetsons when George pressing a button at his desk and saying, "Man, these 3 hour work weeks are murder." Are you kidding me? Oh, I love that you say that, Andrew. They do that well, it's not 3 hours, they do 4 hour days in in uh, Switzerland and in Norway, right? And they say they're some of the happiest people in the whole world. They pay very high taxes, like half their wage is going towards taxes. But there's lots of great maternity benefits, and the husband can take time off. Here in Canada, the wife can take 6 months off to spend time with the baby, and then the husband takes 6 months off to spend time with the baby, and we can split those benefits up now too. But in these Nordic countries, they say there's some of the happiest people ever, right? And they do those short work weeks too. Uh, William, I remember another convention was in Nashville. Is that the location every year? Uh, you remember that episode, Tammy? Oh my goodness, I don't remember that episode. Oh, you kidding? You remember Rosie? You had to remind me of that. Rosie was the robot in the Jetsons. um, no, not this year, Cindy. Maybe next year I will let you know so you can all watch it. Oh, that would be wonderful, William. Yes, if you speak and you have an opportunity to have it filmed, you could just put the link right in here in the comments so that we could go in and check it out. That would be pretty awesome. Speaking of hygiene, I read or heard somewhere that people thought President Thomas Jefferson was strange because he took a bath every day. Really? Oh my goodness. Yeah. I have to have a shower at least 3 times a week. But I remember I used to wash my hair every single day. And in the wintertime I only try to wash my hair once or twice a week at the maximum, because I don't want to go outside and have it damp and break off. But in the summertime, I said, "Oh, it's summertime. I'll be back to washing my hair every single day." No, I'm still washing my hair twice a week. It isn't necessary to do it that often. But again, for hygiene reasons, it is important, right? That we've become kind of clean, a clean society, right? There are expectations because we have those luxuries now of just turning on a tap. There is no excuse to not have good hygiene. And we know the hygiene also is important because it's our health, right? And we pass things along when we're not clean. We're taught to wash your hands, right? And most of the time, people never wash their hands. We all fail, Cindy, at things. Yes, we do. We most definitely do. Um, in one of my ocean liner books, it was mentioned that even after World War II, and when people didn't go to church as much, Saturday was still a day for taking a bath. I think that applied even at sea. Now that you're saying that, my dad got a piece of property up in Dawson Creek in British Columbia. Some guy, he drove cab when he wasn't fishing, and some big shot government guy got in his cab and says, "I'm going to give you a tip. Go buy some land on the Alaska Highway because the government's buying up all the land because they're making the pipeline to get gas into the or oil into the States, right? And they're building the Alaska pipeline." And so my dad bought a piece of property, and there was only like sheds on this property and this one house that you could see outside the walls. And my dad and mom covered all the walls with blankets, and it had a wood stove where we had to melt snow in order to have drinking water or bath water. There was an old shed that had a horse trough, and she would drag it into the house, a big tin um, horse trough. My dad couldn't pull things like that because of his bad heart, but my mom was physically fit. She would pull them into the house, or as kids would pull it into the house, and we boil water to fill this big horse trough off. And my dad would take a bath, and then my mom would take a bath. And because I was the oldest child, then I got to take a bath until everybody had a bath in that one bathtub that was just passed on to one member to the next until my youngest sister was finally taking her bath in the mud water, right? I remember that every Sunday was bath night because then we had to go back to school. We only lived in that house for the one winter. He bought that property for $14,000, 365 acres for $14,000, and we were gone as soon as this government guy gave my dad that tip. Within 2 weeks, we were out on the highway, and my dad had bought some land on the Highway. So he believed this guy, right? He believed this guy that got in the cab. We stayed there for 6 months, and that $14,000, my dad um, turned that into $365,000. He got $1,000 an acre for that land. The Alaska pipeline didn't end up going through that land. It went on the other side of the highway, but they were buying up everything. And then my dad took us to Reno or Vegas. I can't remember. Took us to took us to Nevada. Took us out of school early spring. He took us out of school. We went and lived in Vegas or Reno for a few months, right? And then he had to argue with all the teachers and everything so that because they wanted to hold us all back a grade in school because we skipped so much school that year, right? Yeah. My dad wasn't big on education, right? He was sure proud though on my graduation day. He was super proud, but yeah, he didn't think much of the school system at all, my father, and he didn't think nothing of taking us out of school for a few months and yeah, had some fun. They had just came back and all he had left was enough money to put on a down payment on a house, right? Yeah, my dad liked to gamble. Um, in, yeah, but that ideas came from what Andrew said about the bathtubs. Borax in laundry soap too. Yeah, and that stuff was rough on the skin, but it was used to take out stains, right? And keep clothes as clean as it can. They were using washboards and stuff, and half the time they didn't even rinse things properly, did they? Right? They rinse everything in the same water so that by the time they're rinsing out the sheets are pretty much in the same capacity of borax as when they were washed in the washing bin. Yeah. But those old washing machines, they work a lot better than the new washing machines, the ones with the cranks, right? And because I saw a lady, she has one out on her homestead. She says it's the best machine ever, and she uses it all the time. Yeah. On ocean liners of the past, you had to schedule a bath even if you were in first class. Few, if any, bathtubs, even in the first class. Isn't that interesting? And those cruise liners, ocean liners, they took a long time to cross the ocean. Okay, let's move it fast because we're after 9 o'clock already. Growing up, Andrew, Saturdays were our biggest nights for taking baths for our family. It was watching the Lawrence Welk show, then Hee Haw, and then took turns taking our baths. I love that. Oh, I love that. Yeah. But I remember those television shows, Lawrence Welk. My mother loved Lawrence Welk, and I think us kids liked Hee Haw better than my parents did. But there was a documentary, a wildlife documentary show. It was done by an insurance company called Mutual of Omaha. Do you guys in the States, did you guys get that television show, Mutual of Omaha? And it was a wildlife documentary show. That was mine and my dad's favorite. Oh my goodness. We always look forward to that one coming on television every week. Sounds familiar, Tammy. When I was a child, Saturday was the day for me and my brothers to get our hair washed. Tammy says we had to take daily sponge baths growing up. Our grandparents and parents wanted to save money on the water. We never took sponge baths. right? Sometimes we'd wash our face and wash our hands, but sponge baths, yeah, it was just the one. It's growing up, it was just a once a week thing. I remember going to play my friends and go to their house, and their mothers would always take me to the bathroom and take my socks off, and they'd wash my socks for me and hang them outside to dry, and they would wash my feet for me, and then I would go out and play with my friends, and then after a couple hours when my socks were dry enough, then they would put them on me and send me home, right? Yeah, my parents were we were feral kids growing up, but things are changing, right? In that day, it was probably more acceptable, but it was changing even back then. And my parents were just living by old standards, by old traditions, the way that they were brought up, right? And they just kind of carried it on with us kids. They didn't understand I remember when the TVs come out, they didn't know. They just never wanted us to sit in front of the TV. We'd all want to lay on the carpets with our hands in our things, watching the cartoons and stuff. And they would always be screaming at us to get away from the TV. You're going to ruin your eyes, right? Our grandparents' daily sponge baths growing up, our grandparents and parents wanted to save money on the water. Uh, uh, when we were small, my brothers and I were in the tub all at the same time. Yeah, that was neat when we were kids. We did the same thing as little kids, all take our baths at the same time. We had to use, Tabby says, those, we had to use those I, huge round metal pans. My grandmother filled the metal tub and we took our bath in it. That was done for many years in the 1970s. Oh, you guys have good memories, right? I have memories, but they're pretty sporadic, right? Wow, Tammy, your grandmother didn't have running water back then. They had water from the water pump, but went through the Great Depression. Yeah, that depression was pretty harsh. I got hooked on studying the Depression for quite a while too. And that depression was all caused by the Panama Canal being built. That's when it started. It just, right? Because we were all in distribution and manufacturing. We were a new continent, North America. And, the rail lines died. In that railway lines died, that was just the beginning. People losing their jobs and stuff. And then, people in the manufacturing plants, they lost their jobs because it ended up being cheaper to buy things overseas and take them through uh, Panama Canal, rather than sending them across through the rail lines, right? Yeah, it was really a big thing. The dust balls with the when the desert's all dried up and everything. Yeah, yes, we were resilient and tough kids back then. My father and mother helped build a bathroom for my grandparents. We were still using the outhouse till the early 1980s. Yeah, I didn't like outhouses, right? I'm a lot better with the outhouses now. I do a lot of provincial parks, right? So I do lots of outhouses and stuff when I'm in the provincial parks. And they maintain them pretty good, and they use things now in the pits that make it so the smell is not too bad. I still hold my breath as long as I can and make it as quick as I can. But yeah, the outhouses were not my favorite either. That was country living, Tammy. Yes, it was for sure. We all have faults to some sort, Cindy. None of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. None of us. I'd love to leave it at that, you guys. Just that one idea that we all understand, because we beat ourselves up so much for what we've become in our lives, or what we don't get done in our lives, or in those relationships, or in our jobs, or in that comparison to the neighbor, or to somebody else that wants to make us feel bad because they're so much better. It makes them feel better when they can make somebody else feel bad, right? that we have to recognize that we all make mistakes, but it's in our mistakes, right? Oh my goodness, I don't have my iron here. I was going to pull up my little iron bottle. It's in our mistakes that we learn to do better by ourselves, right? I will never, ever, ever forget to take my iron pills ever again. Never, never. That was something, right? And it could have been something, right? And I'm not out of the woods yet, but right. I breathe better already. It's only been a few days. It could be in my head, but when I notice it, I went out for a walk. Went, oh my goodness. It's like I have those magnets that they put on people's noses now to open up the nostrils. It feels like that. Oh my goodness. Make me do more of those breathing exercises, right? And if you guys haven't done it, just you can do big deep breaths, and then you can hold your breath, and then you can let it out, and then oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. It really does. Oxygen is a great thing, right? And I think also part of that love and that attachment that I have to Mother Nature, to the trees, the provincial parks, sitting under a tree or sitting at a lakeside, is the fact that I'm connecting with pure, clean oxygen that has just been dispersed from the trees, and in that mutual exchange, they get to have my breathy exhales of nitrogen that I let off, right? And it's not so much, I guess, the hugs that I give them, that it's the nitrogen. Maybe that's the case. We all have faults in some sort. None of us are perfect. Yeah, I love that. Okay, you guys. Correction. You might enjoy the book, The Mother Tongue English, and how it got that way. I'm going to check that one out too. I'm just going to write it down here. Andrew, I always like doing that Googling after my live show on on Sunday nights. You guys always give me lots of food for thought, you guys. Okay, I can end the live now, you guys. I made it all the comments, right? I came all the way down. Week number 5. I expect maybe at some point I won't be able to keep up. But that's pretty good that I challenge myself that way, because I like to be a part of the conversation too, and not just the person that's all the time. That it is in that group effort that we all get to hang out with each other. You guys, that was absolutely amazing tonight. Thank you so much for coming out. If you guys want to check into that that gentleman, his name was Dr. Speary, right? His name was Dr. Speary, and the the procedure was the corpus callosum, callosum, and yeah, split brain syndrome. Really, really interesting. You guys might find it really, and it might be very helpful. You guys, it's why I spent the first 40 minutes talking about it. You guys, have a great night. If you want to come and hang out with us tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Central, I'll be here. And if I don't see you this week, during the week, my other live show, I'll see you next Sunday. Thank you, everybody, for coming in and hanging out with me. Bye.